All right, everybody, what is going on? Good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well on this Sunday, and it's a little bit of a pivotal Sunday here on the channel. And the reason why is relatively simple. Today is the day where we pivot from a free agency preview to a draft preview. Right now, today in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Field, we're seeing the last bit of on-field work at the NFL Combine, and then I know tomorrow we do bench press for the offensive linemen, so technically we won't really be completely done with that process until tomorrow, but basically after today, we're going to have, I don't want to say all, but we're going to have a pretty massive majority of the information that we need to determine what we're looking at in this draft. There are still going to be pro days. There's still going to be top 30 meetings, and we will cover all that stuff on this channel, of course, as we need to. But for the most part, after today, we'll have, at the very least, the foundation of the knowledge that we need to say what needs to be said about this draft. So I didn't want to start the draft preview series until after the combine, at least. And if we get information from the pro days that changes our perception on something, then so be it. But starting tomorrow, I believe, unless something big happens later today or early tomorrow, starting tomorrow, we are going to open up the can on the draft preview. And if you've been on this channel for a while now, you guys know how I do the draft. I do my best to cover as wide a range as possible. I recognize that my draft coverage doesn't get super specific with individual players. I don't want to spend a ton of time on one player when realistically I know the odds of the Seahawks getting that player are not super high. So what I like to do is cast a very wide net, talk about as many players as humanly possible, and at the end of the process, we'll at least have a general base of knowledge for as many players as possible. And we've got plenty of time. We got plenty of time. I mean, the combine just wrapped up or is about to wrap up tomorrow, technically. So it's not like the draft is in a couple weeks or anything like that. So we got plenty of time. But my plan is to go position by position, and I'm going to prioritize certain positions and deprioritize some other positions. But realistically, we're going to try to get everywhere, and I understand that some positions are not going to be that interesting to Seahawks fans, but I'm going to do my best to cover as much ground as I can anyway, just so we know what's up. So starting tomorrow, like I said, probably starting tomorrow, we're going to go with running backs. We're going to start with the running backs because to me, that's the first position that is really, really interesting for the Seahawks. And then we're going to go to wide receiver. We're going to do some interior offensive line stuff. And then we'll do, I think, edge rusher, cornerback, safety. Then we loop back around and do some of the positions that I know Seahawks fans are not super plugged into. Quarterback, tight end, tackle, defensive tackle, so offensive tackle and defensive tackle, linebacker. We'll get through everything basically. The plan is to try to get to every single prospect that is projected to be a likely draft pick, and then maybe a couple of extras. So things are going to change a lot. Things are going to morph a lot as we move through this process. But the idea is I want to spend at least a few minutes on every top 250 or so prospect. And then if there are late risers or somebody who just moves up the draft board really fast at the very end, we will loop back around and cover them as well. But the idea is we want to at least know the basics of as many players as possible. So each video, and again, if you've been on my channel for a while, you know how I do things around here. Each video is going to have maybe 2 to 4 players that I discuss, and it's going to be pretty nuts and bolts. I don't put video on screen. I don't do like tape study. I've tried to do that before, and YouTube usually just doesn't let it happen. And even if they do let it happen, they restrict it pretty heavily, and you have to jump through all these hoops to get it to work. I'm not interested in doing that, and I don't have the time for it anyway. when I'm covering this much ground. So the idea is going to be I'm going to talk about the player. I'm going to talk about his measurables. I'm going to talk about what he did in college. I'm going to talk about the perception of the player according to the experts. And then I'm going to talk about, from my perspective, what makes this player appealing, what makes this player, at the very least, flawed, what his issues might be, and then ultimately where I land on the player. And from this base of knowledge, I'll put together a big board. I'll put together an understanding of how I value the player. And by the end of the process, I'll have a pretty good sense of how I feel about this draft. And again, obviously, when I'm just sitting here talking about the player and when I'm just going over my notes from my research into the player, it's not going to get super in depth the way some people do. And I'm cool with that. That's just how I choose to cover the draft. So it's going to be intense. It's going to be a lot of videos. And I'm going to say this straight up. I know the Seahawks do not have a lot of picks this year, and the picks they have are pretty low. They've got a first rounder that is 32nd, second rounder that is 64th, a third rounder that is going to be 96th, and then I believe their sixth rounder is expected to be like 212th. So there are not going to be a lot of players this team can get, and the players they get are not going to be the cream of the crop. So I am going to spend some time talking about the top players in this draft just to be a completionist. But please understand that I'm I understand the team is not going to be able to get those players. And when I spend time talking about players that I know this team can't get and everybody knows the team can't get, there may not be a lot of interest from Seahawks fans. Like, I don't know if Seahawks fans really care to hear about somebody like a Jeremiah Love or a Caleb Downs or a Reuben Bain. Really good players that I'm sure most Seahawks fans would love to have, but not necessarily going to be very compelling for us when we know we have zero chance of getting them. So I'm still going to do it, but it will not surprise me if Seahawks fans kind of check out on those conversations when we're picking at 32. So just bear with me. Part of the process. Again, I want to understand as much of this draft as possible, even the stuff the Seahawks cannot touch. So we will go through the top guys. It's just going to be part of it's just going to be part of the process. And during this process, I'm going to put together a big board, and my plan is I'm going to post it on my Patreon, and I'm going to post it for Ring of Honor members on YouTube. So if you want to see my big board, you can either become a Ring of Honor level member here on YouTube. It's $15 a month, but you only have to pay it once. Or you can become a $10 a month pledge on Patreon. Again, you only would have to pay it once, and you would gain access to my big boards. And I'll probably do more than one during this process. I'll do an initial one, and then I'll do one later, and I'll refine it as time goes by. But if you want to see my big board as I'm putting it together leading up to the draft, that's how you can do it. I'll probably make another video later when I actually finalize the big board. But during the actual draft, I'll have the big board on screen and have it like constantly morphing as players get taken. So you'll be able to see a decent chunk of it then. But yeah, I think that's really about it. So starting tomorrow, we're going to dive in and we're going to cover, I think it's going to be over 250 players. And there may be more because I think we'll have time. Depends on how free agency goes. Free agency could be crazy, but I think we got plenty of time. All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think. More stuff coming soon. Big time.